It's important to always mark International Women's Day because it's a celebration of the achievements of women and in particular of gender equality. We need to remember that women make up 50% of the population, therefore women have to make up 50% of the decision-making body. We look at Gibraltar, for example. Our Ministry of Climate Change is led by Gibraltar's chief scientist, who's a woman, Dr. Lisa Messilio. The government recently set up a climate change committee. The chair of that committee is Angelique Linares. So we are very alive in government to making sure that we have women representation at the top.
Well, one statistic you are familiar with is the fact that there is one female government minister in Parliament out of 10. How much gender bias would you say there is in Gibraltar, and is the government really leading the way?
I think that gender bias continues to exist throughout the world. South Gibraltar is no exception. The reason that when we came into government in 2011, we established as a government the Ministry for Equality. I'm also the chair of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians of the British Islands and Mediterranean region. Through that, we're looking at working with all the parliaments in our region to see how we can increase diversity and representation. I know what it's like to be part of a government where you are the only woman. It's not the kind of thing that I would like to see going forward. I know that, the Chief Minister feels like that as well. We have to work on engaging with the public for people to really want to stand for election.
You commissioned the Gender Pay Gap Survey. When are we going to see those results?
We are now going back to review all these things that we did a lot of work on a couple of years before the pandemic. So we need to look at things, revise them, look to see how relevant they are as of today, update them, and we'll be making announcements on them as soon as we can. As part of our gender pay gap work, we've been doing a lot of work on the economic progress of women. You'll recall that through the Ministry for Equality, with this purpose in mind, we've set up the mentorship program for women. We've also set up training on unconscious bias. When we look at the gender pay gap, it's not just about the figure of the pay gap, it's the reasons that create the pay gap and what it is that we have to do to address those barriers that stand in the way of women.
Well, one of those barriers is parental leave. When are we going to see that introduced?
We have advanced a lot of work on things that are strategic and policy changes in the government, but unfortunately for the last 2 years our priorities and our resources have been diverted elsewhere and everything has been directed to COVID. There is nothing that gives me greater pleasure now that we've announced the de-escalation of the COVID measures, that we can go back and deal with everything else that's unfortunately, through no fault of our own, but that's the way that it worked out, everything that's been on the back burner.